Morning, Jeff.
Hey, Sammy and Eric. Sorry, I was
Good
you're
morning,
talking.
Jeff.
I walked away to get some coffee since there was no one else here.
Okay, that's fine. I was
You're
rolling out
on
from
bridge by yourself.
And it's funny. I think the first time I did that in a meeting after the pandemic and all, and then I said, yeah, so somebody said like, "Hey, can I give you a call?" I'm like, yeah. Hold on just a second. Let me go get some coffee, and then I realized that when I came back, a minute later, I said, uh, like, I guess I should clarify that I'm working from home, so running to get some coffee means walking over here to the kitchen, not like I'm going to run down to Starbucks and get a coffee and I'll be back in 20 minutes. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. Like the old days. Yeah.
Like the old days, yeah.
Yeah. Although for whatever reason, the kitchen is like 3 full paces out of Bluetooth range.
Uh, well, mine is if I wear my headset, but I don't wear the headset home since there's nobody else around here, so I can keep it quiet and don't have to wear it. So
Yeah. I'm sure you miss it, right? It's nice to have something in your ear all day, every
right.
day. My headset died, but
I just bought a new wired one for when I do go to the office now. And I do like it. It's nice in that it only has the one earpiece, but I find all the other noise around me. Like, I guess I probably need one that's actually a dual head, dual eared, or maybe I just need to pull out my other earplugs and stick one in. There's so much background noise around you.
Good morning, Tim. Hi, Deb.
Hi.
So, by after, let's probably get started. Any opens today? If not, want to cover a couple of items, or 2 or 3 or 4 items listed here. One is we want to finalize, or at least we have 1 more week or another 10 days, 12 days to submit the abstract. What I'm kind of looking for is as a overall DCEM workstream here, right? So we are kind of thinking 3 different items. One is for IUE, we want to have a presentation, and also per energy, we want to have that conversation started. So we want to have a presentation there. Next one, we are thinking about a panel. The panel to discuss how are we going to use the metrics to influence the efficiencies in the data center. Do we want to organize differently from that thinking?
are you trying to share something, Sammy? Or are you just talking?
I'm not written down, or I hadn't put it in
Okay.
the thing here. I can probably let me see whether I have that internal one. I can take and put it.
I think for another meeting you had it in a spreadsheet or something if somebody wants a visual.
Yeah. Hold on. I will put it in the slide and share it in a minute. But I think that is a kind of thinking along the line right now. And then if it is panel, then we have to start thinking about putting the name so that we can load in the system who we want to invite, or we want to be within the people here, right? what is
So you're
obviously
thinking,
we can have Intel
if we have a
HP
panel, who's on the panel?
come again, Eric.
You're asking if we have a panel, who's on the panel?
Correct, correct.
Yeah.
I think Jay Dietrich would be fun. I don't know if we want to reach out of OCP membership and get other people, but he works for Uptime Institute and he's also driving a lot of the energy efficiency at the green grid. And I did look at that paper you sent out around last week, Sammy, and a lot of it is either it refers to prior art from the green grid, and the green grid has moved ahead since then, and I think that he would well be able to represent it. Now, whether
You said, Deb?
Jay Dietrich, so the question would be, would he want to take his personal time and his personal money to come be on the panel? That I don't know. He lives like in, I think, Wisconsin. Can send a link to him, but I think he would be a great person if you want a broader industry perspective. I'm definitely off the list. I don't think I would get funding to come.
You just have to construe it as customer critical somehow, Deb.
Well, how would I make that case?
Oh, that's your headache. That's
Yeah.
No, I think you're right.
Right, and I mean you have you have Rakesh as well, right? I think he's a little bit scratching my head. He's scratching his head, I think, why he's funding me just in his work. Never mind. Sending me to this conference. So
yeah, I think what I would like to is send out kind of invite, are they willing to join? Let us kind of pencil in a few names here.
yeah, I
So,
don't think it would help us if it were a panel of just Intel people.
yeah, no, that's the reason I want to kind of get it. We want to get the names there. We can get influence there, right? Obviously, I believe Shruti is there. We can get somebody from Microsoft, and we can decide who on the Intel. So on the HP side, is Jeff or anybody you want to there? Or
yeah, I should be there because I need to be there for the hardware management track anyway. So but the same funding footnotes on a lot of that is going to be the question. But it's my highest priority in terms of conference bits to attend. So
Where do you live? I'm
in Houston, so it
is a little bit of a haul.
It's a little bit of a haul, but it's not. But from my perspective, whether it was $1 or whether it is 1,000, it's going to be the same. It's going to be the same conversation.
All right, I put a link to Jay. I'm also thinking somebody from the iMasons. I'm thinking in particular Miranda, if she's planning to come, would be a good person for a panel on these types of topics. Are you familiar with Miranda, or should I research her too?
I talked to her.
Yeah, I think she would be a good. I've seen her on other panels. I think she would be good. And then maybe somebody from the OCP, the facilities side. They have people looking at sustainability as well. Like maybe Priya.
So Priya from where?
I think she works for Google, but she's active in OCP, sustainability, the DCF sustainability Workstream.
Okay.
Are you writing this down somewhere?
Yeah,
Do
yeah,
I
I'm
need to
writing
actually
down in my note, so it's
let
not
let me find?
Yeah.
I'm sure I have something from her in my inbox. Let me see if we can
Yeah,
view.
it may help to kind of get a feel for what we think the scope of the panel should be. You know, overcoming the hurdle to improve sustainability, leveraging these metrics. You know, who's our? Are we trying to talk about people who are going to go try to do that, or
So
right? I mean, it's hard for me to translate that into what are we going to talk about.
yeah, I think let us see kind of thing, right? We want to get a lot of metrics, like we are getting telemetry, all this thing we are putting, right? I assume that we are able to get that metrics from the system. How are we using the metrics to go and influence? Hey, we need to reduce idle power, or you need to reduce cooling architecture need to be changed somehow to kind of reduce cooling power, things like that, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
So
I see. Yeah. So we may need some. We need a software person, right?
Yeah, yeah. So that you need a data plane as well as a control plane, both sides. And how do we influence the hardware side to kind of reduce power, right?
So I think Jay would be an interesting person to bring to this conversation because he drove the Uptime Institute survey that showed what a large percentage of data centers are just not prepared to monitor and report on, never mind improve, right? On a lot of these things. And I would say I did go to the Uptime Institute conference a couple of weeks back, and it was like, I looked at it like it was a focus group of data center operators. I would say probably 24 were there. Enterprise for the most part. There was a little bit of hyperscaler and colo people, but mostly enterprise. And one of the speakers was talking about monitoring data center infrastructure manager, those kinds of things. And he asked, and who here uses this type of technology, and 0 raised their hands. So I think that as an industry, if you put aside the hyperscalers that have already implemented their own and made a lot of investment, they really don't need to hear from us how important efficiency is. The rest of the industry is not even at the playground, never mind getting ready to start to play the game.
Yeah, there's another message there, right? That this is much more financially critical to the hyperscalers than it is to any.
Yes, exactly. Or the hyperscalers see the ROI and invest, whereas these enterprise.
Well, the hyperscalers are power limited in their generation of revenue.
Yes.
And no one else is.
Yes. Well,
Yeah,
I guess it
depends.
It depends what grid depends how important your data center is to your revenue and what your local grid situation is.
Well, yeah, but cost optimization is motivation X. Revenue constraint is motivation Y. Y is way greater than it.
Yeah, well, so basically I'm kind of looking for a name. So maybe the format I was kind of thinking is maybe maximum 5. I believe that's what the OCP
Well,
recommends.
we need a good meaty topic and a long discussion to have 5, right? Because basically the panel duration is going to be set by the panel diameter.
Right.
So if we want a 25-minute, 30-minute discussion, keep it to 3, right?
Okay. Okay.
If you really want to have an audience discussion, right? Depending on
Right.
how we set it up and what we talk about, maybe that's a good idea, right? If there's going to be a lot of questions and a lot of discussion, you can have a bigger panel and a longer time. But
Mhm.
so don't really feel that here unless we're going to try and, you know, pitch some idea of how to make it work, right? Depends on what the panelists do, right? If they
Right.
talk about their theories about why none of the prior proposals paid off, right?
Right.
You know, if we spend the panel time kind of talking, giving a history lesson, right, on some of the proposals that have been made and approaches that have been published, and the fact that no one's adopting them, and like Deb said, we could start, you know, bringing in some survey data about how people are just not doing this. And then we want to talk to the audience, right? And have the audience, get the audience interactive on what does it take to get traction, and what's the best way to do it, right? Then a bigger, longer panel might be worth it.
I think let's decide. I think what I was kind of looking for is want to invite. We can invite, but no, without confirmation, right? We can confirm it back, like if we get multiple people interested in
Right.
joining
Yeah,
the people, right?
we could try to make it big and end up small.
Right.
The fallback, that'd be all right too. Yeah.
Right. Right. And ideally, what you're thinking, Eric, is probably 3 people on the table and 1 person asking a question and interacting with the audience, rather than going to 5.
Right. Yeah, that's kind of just the default, right?
Right.
Unless we have a big idea, which is fine, right?
Right. So I think for probably for the abstract submission, we can at least put the slot in with the description. Maybe the final names we really need to get the confirmation, right?
Yeah, for the abstract, we can just talk about where we were thinking about getting people from.
Right.
So that the people reviewing the submission know that we're talking about trying to bring in external people and have a discussion.
Right. Start thinking if anybody else pops up, like can be influencer on the things, right? To make a change.
I put Priya's name in the chat. You know, she might not be the one, but she might have somebody in data center facilities, right? OCP data center facilities that would be a good choice for this. Thinking of Rob, somebody from Schneider. I think he's from Schneider, but I can't think of who he is right off the top of my head. But she would, you know, she'd be a good person to suggest somebody.
Yeah, I will kind of reach out
Alex
that way.
From Schneider, right? Alex Rakov.
Yeah, that's not who I'm thinking of. He is from Schneider. That's true.
Who, Rob?
But no, Alex. I mean, Alex might be a good person. I mean, I don't know how close he is to the part of the Schneider business that does monitoring and data collection for, you know, for data centers. But we could ask him that.
Okay, that will also add to that.
Somebody from Equinox, maybe, you know, right? Big players.
Yeah, I mean, what they say is that it, you know, at least in the EED, right? So the Energy Efficiency Directive in the EU, where there's requirements to report, they say, we just own the facility, we don't own the IT equipment, and we can't possibly, you know.
Yeah, it depends. It's the conversation we want to have, right? I think in terms of submitting, you know, compliance to regulation for annual metrics, the colos are relevant. For dynamic management and optimization of efficiency of what you're doing day to day, they are not relevant, right?
Well, they point to, they don't own the IT equipment, so therefore,
No, well, they're not the owner operator. They're not, if whatever efficiency optimization of the workload there is not the colo's problem. They're not even involved.
exactly.
So I'm saying they're not relevant depending on what we're talking about here.
Yeah, if
Right.
if you want, I can reach out to somebody in ARPA-E. We are trying to design the data center for the future for 2030 and beyond. Maybe I can reach out to the program director to see if they are interested in participating.
Maybe another
Yeah.
idea. Yeah.
We would ask,
ARPA-E,
what
you know?
what
Yeah.
are their plans for, monitoring and improving energy
Yeah.
efficiency across
Right.
their new data center. Now it's plans. There's a lot of, it's a big gap between what you want to do and then when you finally go to
Yeah.
implement it. But
No, if they are coming to OCP, maybe I can ask that person to be, involved in the discussion if, works out, right? It's
Yeah.
good to reach out to 5-6 people. At least
Yeah,
we'll
correct.
have minimum 3, right? So
Yeah, we can basically say we are not finalized, but we are reaching out to the interest rate and then
yeah.
we'll confirm that, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's good. So let us probably I will send out the wording to this team, and if we guys can help on some of the fine tuning, will be good so that we can clear on what we are really want to discuss here, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
I do need to drop at the half hour.
Anything that you want to add based on
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine. I just wanted to give you that heads up.
Okay.
I'm fine with this. I think you should submit and see what's accepted.
One more thing also, you had some comments about this paper, right? Do you have something you want to share?
So I did read through the paper. I think, a lot of what they're, that was a lie. I read through the conclusion.
Oh, nice.
I'm being honest here. I did not read every single, good job on them for doing such a broad survey. A lot of what they came to very much centers around the green grid. That's how I would describe it. And the green grid has made significant progress since they did that survey, was probably, 2-3 years ago. So I did look and see there are a couple of things that are quote unquote published. So Eric and I are both in that working group at the Green Grid. There's a couple of things that are published, and theoretically, I think that means everybody in this group can view it as well from the Green Grid. So that might be something that we want to do. If other people looked at that paper, they liked basically where that paper is going, but they, want fresher research, I would recommend that we find some way to align with the Green Grid.
So do you have some recommendation from OCP side, right? You're trying to operationalize, right? Is there anything a metric side or some concept side that there is things not solved that we want to kind of make sure that we spend some time and address and try to solve that thing here?
So again, what I'm recommending is, since the Green Grid is quite far ahead of us here, is that we find some way to align and cooperate with them. So that would be my overall recommendation. The basic problem of deciding what is the maximum capability of, let's just look at servers, right? What's the maximum capability of all the servers in this data center? And then what percent of that capability is being used? And also aligning that with energy as well. The Green Grid has proposals around, if you're not many people are not going to monitor and measure at the level we would hope. So therefore, giving them an alternate methods and ways to describe the those aspects of their equipment, I would say to align with the green grid.
For aligning I'm kind of looking is we do need to put some parts from our side to say like what are the things we want to align, right? Otherwise, it's kind of it's a lot of items, right? I want to kind of say like, hey, this particular part we want to align, or I'm trying to see like, can we have subset of list that we can think that OCP can influence, and can we get that alignment? Or also, I'm trying to see what is the logistics for the alignment. Like, you want to invite somebody from Green Grid come here, or?
Well, like I said, from that working group, there are some things that are public. And so Eric and I could talk through those things since we are in both places. And then we could decide from there what we want to do.
Okay, yeah. If you can, either since we are in both, if you can probably once probably can able to say like, hey, these are the things coming from here. Can we get alignment, or is there anything recommendation from them to OCP to can help to solve the problem? Then we can look at that as a area, right? Okay. Thank you, Deb. And anybody else, either Jeff, Eric, or Kirby, did you have a chance to read the material?
No, nothing
Yeah,
much.
next
If
step
you
here
need,
is probably to write down the abstract, right?
Can you say that again, Eric? Didn't.
So I think our next step is to try to articulate the abstract, right? What we think what we want the conversation to be about, right?
yeah.
Yeah, this one, right? Yeah.
But yeah, I think we need to do a little better than one sentence so we can tell scope a little better of what we want the conversation to cover.
Yeah, once you write it up, you can just send me. I'll socialize with some of the DC operators within the Washington DC area plus ARPA-E, and then see if who would be interested in participating. I could do that,
Okay. So let me do one thing. I will send this on to the text to the team here, or I can in fact put it in the SharePoint and put a link that may be easier one people can edit, and we can.
Yeah.
Right.
That sounds good.
Yeah.
Good.
I will do that.
Thank you.
Eventually, really need to highlight this is what going to be helpful for the audience, right? They really need to. We need to attract enough audience so that they feel they can contribute, and as well as get something out of the panel, right? So for the performance one, do we think that or we want to? I mean, the first one is kind of clear. We are doing a lot of work is done. I'm trying to see the second one. Do we want to call it as a performance per energy, or do we want to even up level it a little bit more?
Yeah, on the second one, I guess I'm not real clear. Can you say more about what what you think the presentation is? I mean, is this, you could present what spec power is supposed to do or what CERT is supposed to do, and it would meet your definition as it's written here.
Yeah, so we have not spent a lot of time here. That's why it's vague. To say like a definition underway. What I was kind of thinking is we want to write something, and we feel that right now it's May, right? June, July, August, or we are in June. July, August, September. It's 3 months we have, and we going to spend enough time on the performance side, then we can roll up those work output to the audience, right? If our energy will be spent on other areas other than the performance, then we want to write in such a way that it is a performance plus whatever other things we want to look at it, right? So you can think of it as a placeholder.
Right. I know we have some time. I just
Right. Or this is going to be controversy, and if we put a performance, then if we don't deliver it, then audience will be not happy with it, right?
yeah, well, and it goes to the other topic you had on the agenda for today was idle power, right?
Right. Let's go there. Yeah.
And that's one of the things that needs to be in this session or the one above it, right?
Yeah, I was thinking to fold as part of this the IEE itself, right? Since we are going to be covering what is that metrics is going to look like, and we want to walk through, including the profile. That's why I kind of joined. We need to define the complete profile definition. We want to share the schema for it. And as part of that, we also need to define the definition. I believe we can get the work white paper done. We can point to that white paper and say like, we have a white paper released, and that talks about all these things, and we can highlight what is the idle power means, what is the load means, what is the fan power, all those things, and what are the improvement need to be made, and so the profile for the IUE.
Yeah, I think it works if we, I guess to me, if we use the top one to kind of talk about what we want to measure and what we expect to find, right? So in terms of, since the IT side efficiency really hasn't been quantified, right? So the first one is to talk about the white paper and kind of, the white paper goes through the motivations, right? What all the things are that we think we want to quantify that are kind of non, overhead or not useful IT side energy, so that we can actually draw out what the efficiency is on the IT side of getting power to the components that are actually doing work. And then that could lead pretty naturally into the other presentation, the other session on, okay, now we want to talk about how much work you're doing with the energy you have, right? Which is a slightly different topic, right? And then somewhere straddling the two, if you're ready to do work, but you're not doing it yet, that's the idle state. It's not really idle where everybody's asleep. And that's the issue, I think, with idle is that there isn't, it's very difficult to come up with a clean definition of the idle that we are talking about.
Right.
And IUE can talk about why you want an idle power number, but I think you're going to have to get down into the performance measurement to talk about how you also measure idle.
Right. So basically, like, first is kind of overall work stream, what we have done, and kind of put the starts together, and then we want to have a separate session on the IUE, and do we want to have a separate session for the performance part?
Yeah,
want to make it as
this one is definitely so I think my big struggle with the second one, right, is we want to do what the team going from Cert 2 to Cert 3 wants to do,
Right.
Right. We want a work per watt that's modern, right? And that's what CERT's working on right now so one of the obvious question is, are we planning to just wait for that and use it, or are we proposing something else? And if so, why?
Okay. So does it make sense to kind of general Workstream update and what is our plan, what is the things and work, next steps. We want to give it something like this, or
Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I'm not sure what. I think we could have another. IUE probably does deserve its own session because we got the white paper coming out.
Right,
so
right.
so that's a good. And like you said, we have a few months to figure out exactly how we want to make good use of the time, right? But I think
Right.
there's definitely a session there, familiarizing people with what's in the IUE white paper and where we are in that process. And then the work per watt is a good topic. I'm just trying to figure out, if we tee it up as a session, what are we hoping to put together to present in that session?
Right.
It'd be great if we had more insight into what CERT 3 definition is, but I think right now people working on it are under confidentiality, so we may have to go negotiate. Maybe that would be a good AR. I'd like to have better insight into, in theory by the end of the year, although, historically they've slipped a lot. So I'm not real confident it'll get released this year, but that's what they're trying to do. And they're supposed to be extending it to meet some of the shortcomings we've already called out, right? Where like right now, DC rack delivery isn't accounted for. They're going to add that. Accelerator devices that are not the primary CPU are not accounted for. They're going to add that too. They're updating and modernizing the worklets, right? But I don't have any insight into how many worklets or what they are, or what they're doing about transition from 2.0 to 3.0, if anything, right? I think one of our, without breaking confidentiality too much here, one of the concerns from the Green Grid is that you remember when spec went from spec, was it 2008, which we lived with for 9 years or something, and then it updated. Frankenstein switched to 2017, right? And there was no way to compare 2017 data to 2008 data. The problem being, if you wanted to show like a gen-to-gen comparison across the transition, or a 4 or 5 or 7 year refresh, you couldn't compare the performance numbers across the gap, right? And that's going to be a problem here, both from a regulatory perspective and from an I'm trying to improve my efficiency perspective, right? If the work per watt thing, hits hyperspace every once in a while and winks out here and winks in somewhere else, and you can't compare across the two, you can't tell if you're winning or losing.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah, there is no single work is going on, so you cannot really like compare the same work, right? It's a hybrid work model, right?
Yeah. Well, on the other hand, though, right, if we start from scratch and OCP generates its own perf metric, I don't know why it's going to be a real uphill battle to have anybody use it, right? So
we don't want it. The way I was thinking, Eric, is if there are already pre-existing the performance benchmarks or metrics, right? Can we get it advertised? Here is my capability. Even that probably not good enough. At the end of the day, how much performance you really generated, that's what really important, right?
Right. Yeah. So you kind of want effective proxy workloads for the kinds of workloads that actually matter, right?
Right. How much, like if you have a high performance car, does not matter how much performance is really used, right? if you are sitting in the garage without using it, does not really matter, right?
Right, or if you use it, a couple minutes per hour, it's
Right,
not mattering very much either, but.
right. So how much really able to produce for the energy that how much energy you spend and how much performance you produce, that is more really accurate metrics than your capability at all, right? Most of the times when you look at benchmark, it says, my max capability is this, right? But
Yeah, most benchmarks are
right.
saturation benchmarks.
Correct. So that's where I think we need to say, like, hey, what is it? What metrics we need to read from the system so that you can aggregate and say, like, here is a performance I'm generated for how much energy I spend and how much performance I generated, right? That's what we need. But if there are proxy metrics or work already done by somebody else, we just need to say, in OCP systems, I can able to get those data out. If I'm able to get those data out, if I'm start plotting the performance I'm getting for the energy I spend, then you can compare. You spend low energy and you created a lot of performance. That's a good metric, right?
Right. Yeah, and that's what we're after, right? If you modernize your equipment, you should get a better score, right?
Correct.
And that's really, I think. Yeah, I don't know that it's interesting to get too much into directional correctness versus precision, right? Where the absolute value maybe doesn't mean much, but the relative values do, right?
Correct. But as long as you measure the same metrics, then you can easily to get a relative, right?
Right. Yeah, if you're consistent in how you measure it, you can tell if it's moving up or down over time, which is really what we're after. Right. And that may be a topic to tee up all by itself, right? The other thing that you kind of sparked here that I don't know how operationally viable it is, right? But well, it would be nice if an operator could measure the performance they care about, right? They know what their peak capacity is, and we want to know where they are relative to peak, and they probably want to know that too. But they're not interested in sharing their application code or a whole lot of information about what they're doing. Right. So if it was, I don't know. I guess what I'm starting to envision is there's a standard data schema that you respond to an API with the information you're after, but it's on its own scale, right? And how you calculated it could be opaque to the reporting mechanism. Right. But that doesn't really solve the problem with how we help people go do that, right?
Right.
It'd work for people that already know how they want to do that, but I think that's a pretty small audience.
Right. So let's, I think let's think about it. Maybe let's fine tune the wordings. Anyway, probably when we meet next week, we can finalize that text and submit it, right? When we have time.
Okay. Yeah, sounds good.
Thanks. Yeah, I think finalizing the text to submit it is, that's the second order goal. The first order goal is to be clear on what we think the session's about. Right?
Correct. Like, what do we want to get it accomplished, right? I think I totally agree. That's what this team's output is going to be, right? That's what we're really after, right?
Yes. Yeah. And so it's useful for us to align on what we think we want to try to do.
Right.
Even if we don't know exactly how yet.
Right. So now that takes to the next topic. I want to spend some time on the ideal power. I had a meeting with Danny, and then we started discussing. I think if you looked at the before our definition, right? We said system booted, and you can have a static measurement or dynamic measurement. basically like what is it included, right? Is it includes maybe even I think let me go to this picture. I think that's where the conversation.
Yeah, I was thinking about that, and it occurred to me that I think we need this to be a dynamic measurement. And
Yeah.
and what I'm thinking, right, is even if all we're after is fan power and power delivery losses, right? Even if we weren't facing this, the system is actually awake and it has a variable idle power when it's connected to the network and waiting for work. When we talk about why the PUE is higher in a hot and humid climate, it's because there are more cooling days per year, right? But if you wanted to report an annual average on idle power, the ambient temperature is a factor, and that changes day to day.
Correct.
So I don't think you can have a static measurement here.
The reason I put want to include static as an option is unless the system that you have a mechanism to get the measurement done. So it's more basically like for BMC, right? BMC is the one I assume is going to report it.
Yeah, no. I think if you rename them
Right.
to be more accurate, you say an option 1 is estimated and option 2 is measured.
Oh, God. Okay.
Then
Okay.
I'm with you, right?
That's good.
Obviously, a dynamic estimate doesn't help, right?
Right.
Okay. Yeah, no, I think if we're going to actually measure it, I think you have to be able to measure it not just when you reboot or not just once at deployment. You got to be able to measure it, continually, right? At least once a day,
Right.
If not, whatever the metric pulse is here, every hour, every 10 minutes, every minute, you want that pulse here too, right? So systems that are idle you continually get a growing data set of where you sit when you're idle.
Yeah. I think what you're saying is it can be a same system. You're operating in different geos. It's estimated.
Or just in August versus January.
Right. Even same different month or a different climate situation. Your estimation can account for that changes and give you a value. It's not a static.
Right.
Correct. Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
That's a good
point.
Yeah.
I think so for our estimation methodology, if we document that,
right.
We don't want the best number you're ever going to see. We want to see an estimate of what you believe the annual average to be.
Right. Yeah, for that particular thing, right? Yeah. That's a good point. Now I think the question is the basically like coming down to is we are saying ideal power. In the ideal power case, like what are the thermal and are we including thermal and power, the power conversions?
Or are we doing
part of ideal or outside?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, and I ran into I think we want to subtract them out, but we can make a case either way, right? The reason I think that, so since I've thought about this before, right, and we haven't discussed it, obviously the big issue with the prior proposal from Meta, it was great that they kind of broke the ice and put a proposal out there at a global summit, I guess now 3 years ago, but they were treating this as a static one-time thing, and they were trying to include kind of the other way. They were trying to collapse thermal and power conversion into idle and not worry about them. I contend that won't serve, because the thermal and power conversion obviously do scale with load, right? If your dynamic range on your system is 3x or 5x from idle to peak, the thermal and power conversion scale for where you are on the load line, right? When you double the power, you double the conversion losses, give or take, right? And then you have this non-linear problem with thermal, especially if you're air cooling, right? And so we really want those things to be broken out. And if you want to break out the thermal and power conversion losses, not knowing what your baseline is a problem.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
which means we don't want them balled up in the idle power, right?
Yeah, you don't want a double count, right?
Yeah, and so
right.
I think because we want to measure those things as they scale, I think we will have a measurement on them at idle. And so we define the idle to be the total idle power minus what's already accounted for in power and thermal, right?
Or can we say the ideal thermal power, ideal what do you call power conversion or ideal, I don't know, the remaining thing or something like that, so that do we want to tag the thermal and power for the ideal, how much it's consumed?
Well, I think we end up with a curve for each one of them, right? It'll be possible with this telemetry to generate your load line,
Right.
right?
Right.
And we'll need to know the y-intercept for each of them, right? And then
Right.
in theory, the idle power isn't going to move, right? When you move up the load line, the idle power doesn't move.
Correct. Correct.
But
Yeah,
thermal
it's just a
power conversion,
constant that you want to remove from your the computational power, right?
yeah. So I think we want an honest idle power number that stands alone, right? That doesn't include other things too, and doesn't, you know. So anyway, that's where I went when I thought through it. We can obviously have a discussion here.
So again, I think the question is, do we want to have a ideal power thermal and power, ideal power, how much power consumed on when your system is idle? How much thermal power consumed on when system is idle?
Yes, I think we do.
Okay.
And then the idle, the total idle power is the sum of the three, just the way you drew it, right?
Right. Yeah, I think there is then I need to put one more thing, right? The computational idle thing, right?
Yeah, we need to qualify it. Yeah, because there's going to be an idle power that's the sum of the three, and then there's going to be an idle power that's the part that's not thermal and power.
Right.
Yeah.
Then I think
That's
the
right.
definition of idle then includes all the three components.
And that also has the advantage of disambiguating, right? So that we've already addressed this question, it won't come up again, right? In terms of how are we doing this?
Yeah. So I think that is another question. In fact, let me share this one, and I will share it. Let me share my monitor here itself. So if you look at the Microsoft, I think I got some of the sustainability through the link here. So you can go and download any of, I mean, at least the laptop or a Surface kind of items, right? If you go and get this document, it kind of gives you three basic items for sustainability. Eco profile, what is how much power is your consumed, packaging and environmental impact, green gas and other things, right? Energy used. The main three things out of for us here, when it's off, how much power, when it is sleep, how much power, and how much ideal, it's how much power, right? So there is a definition of ideal here. And also when it's sleep, it's like kind of a S3, right? And for us, instead of off, it can be standby, right? For servers, PMC is still loaded. Even you can think of off as a standby.
Yeah, yeah, soft off where you can be woken up to down the wire that's fine, right?
Right.
If you can't wake up down the wire, you're just off.
Yeah. Yeah, if it is off, not fully off, it's still kind of standby. I mean, standby, right?
Yeah, you can still have it. You can have it armed for wake on LAN, right? That's
right. So the question is, do we want to have the similar concept here on the servers? Standby, sleep, idle, and max power. Then we will go to the idle power from here.
And then this idle power would be your estimate, right?
Yeah, this is a estimate or a method. Now we need to firm the definition
Well,
of what is
if
idle
it's
power.
published, right? If it's part of device info and it never changes, then it's an estimate.
Yeah, but the problem is when we infrastructure services ready, for example, depending on what OS you load, your power consumption may vary.
Yep, absolutely agree. And in fact, that was the gist of that presentation 3 years ago, was that Meta at least was using this state, right, to approve or reject software releases of the cloud platform software, right?
Okay.
If you did a release that jacked up the idle power for no good reason, then they rejected it and said, go fix it.
Right. And part of the infrastructure, I even saw the paper, like if you are doing a virus scan or whatever the base services, right? It's
Mhm.
considered a part of infrastructure. So we need to really like spell out what is that included in infrastructure, what is not included, right? It's basically no workloads are running. Is this kind of high good enough? I want to expand and put a wording here, but
Yeah, well, I think it's a good starting point, right? I think it's probably not prescriptive enough to be operational, right?
right.
And that's the question, I guess, is how are we going to flesh it out, right? What do we think? What else do we need to add, and by what process are we going to add it in terms of precisely defining idle? I think I get it when we have a discussion like this, and this is good language, right? Infrastructure services ready
Right.
is good language, right? But it's not strictly defined, right?
Yeah, I think that's what we need to do, put something out and get some alignment, right? So what that means for network, memory, storage, I don't know, like health, monitoring or whatever thing, right? And the security, right? I think all the virus and other things classified under security thing, right?
Yeah, and obviously you can double click in any of those, right?
Right.
There's down the wire orchestration, there's down the wire monitoring and management, there's down the wire security. So there's a bunch of network ports open to a whole bunch of different services in the data center, and
Right.
hundreds of thousands of packets a second coming in, and you're idle in quotes, right?
Right. Right.
The load balancer hasn't given you any work yet.
Right.
Right.
Correct.
You're a far cry from idle, right?
So again, do we need to expand a little further here, right? What does that means for network? What does that means for memory storage? Even CPU, GPU, or I don't know, IO. So generally, like if it is 5%, below 5%, whatever the number consumed, right? At least even we need to have a mechanism to measure like how much different infrastructures are consuming today.
Yeah, well, and one thing we could bring in, I know we're out of time for today, but there are a couple of customers that we have. Thanks, Jeff. There are a couple of customers that are concerned with the response latency over the network in this state, right? And that actually constrains how much power you can save, right? We've been struggling with recipes so that the ping latency over the network doesn't get out of control. And obviously that puts tension on this. It's like, okay, we can get your network latency down, but your idle power is going up, right?
Right. And probably do we even need to put some wake up numbers, right? If I'm in a sleep, how much latency, when you're idle, how much response time or something like that?
Yeah, that's where I'm headed, right? In terms of actually defining what this state means, we actually need to get to some of that grain. It doesn't have to be exhaustive, but we have to have some of that in it, so that you don't game the system, right? That's the issue, right? We don't
Right.
want just the lowest idle you can achieve, which of course no one will use because
Right.
you're not responsive. And then there's the responsive state you actually use, and we don't have a number for it. And then now we're back in trouble again about not knowing what the idle power is.
Correct. Yeah, I think we are also top of our. I do need to jump to another one. So let us probably start putting some wording around that. We want fine tune and get some alignment and agreement to put in the papers and the resumes.
Yeah, we also, I think you and I need to. We got to figure out how do we get more participation. I mean, it's great that Jeff dialed in, but he didn't say much,
Right.
and we didn't have anybody else here. So
I think
I guess we're running a public process. If they let us just run it, then we can just run it. But that may not be. We're not getting a lot of input.
Yeah, I think what I'm thinking, Jeff, is if we can get some presentations ready and send it out, and probably I should instead of sending the agenda like the day or previous day, I should send it out earlier. That then they know like there is a content ready for review, right?
Right.
But
Yeah.
we do need people participating in creating content. I think that's another thing, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's the other edge of the knife is you end up having to do everything yourself because there's nobody else doing anything.
Right.
That's not great for you or for OCP, right?
Right.
But I guess if no one else will do it, we could do it, and then we'll get done. But
yeah, I think the controversy what I have seen is if we publish something, then people jump on it and say like, it does not. I want to
That's right.
do it. Right.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess we can test that, right? Get something out there, and once people start throwing rocks at it, at least they're talking to us now.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's
All
try
right.
think up Erika. Then we'll see what we can do to kind of improve some participation here.
All right. Thanks,
Okay.
Sammy.
Thank you, Kobe.